All right. Well, welcome everyone to our February ASIS Kansas City chapter meeting. We have a pretty good turnout. And before we start getting to the business, Mike, can you give us an invocation?
All right. Hold on just a moment here. I was going to include can we come back to that for just a second? I wasn't quite ready for that there, Rick.
Sorry, put you on the. So I'll go through some of the chapter business right now. So the first thing right now I'd like to talk about is the chapter membership. So to be a member in good standing, you have to be a member of the ASIS International and a member at the local level. So if you haven't done that yet, please go to our website, kcasis.org, and submit either renew your membership or join. I think it's a great value, and especially when we start doing more in-person things, I think the working and fellowship is more than worth the $35. Just and as a reminder, well, it's $35, but that is a real significant impact to our chapter. We still have the host, the website, register the name, maintaining our mailbox. It all costs money. So even when we're not doing in-person things, we do still have money going out. So your membership really helps the chapter and it keeps the chapter going. Second thing is we're working on our March event. I'm working through the details right now, but that should be posted soon. And requesting, like, if you have an idea for a guest or a topic that you would like to see in one of the that you would like to see in a chapter meeting, or we can even, if there's an education event, which we could do outside of our normal schedule event, just contact one of us, someone from the board, and we'll get you take that into consideration at our board meeting and try to get something scheduled. More involvement from the chapter really helps make it more vibrant. Additionally, I've been working with St. Louis chapter pretty strong, and I don't know if there's anyone on from the St. Louis chapter, but I'm starting to post. They're sending me their events, and I'm posting it online, so you should see announcements in email when they're coming up. They got some really good presentations coming in right now, so you could get basically double the events just by being our member. And we have some questions from the board. I'm gonna turn it over to Jared to ask the questions. We're using some computer magic to do it. But before that, Mike, do you want to do the invocation now? Or?
Yep, I'm ready. Okay. Well, I was ready. Hold on a second. God. All right. Heavenly Father, we ask you for the blessing of this meeting, and we lift up the family to the security officer that was killed in St. Louis. That was a ASIS International member, Mr. Cook. Be with him and his family as they grieve for the loss of a family member and a valued professional in the security industry. In these given and difficult times, we know that this is your will, that you govern over us, and we ask for your guidance in all that we say and all you do is to glory your name. Your name we pray. Amen.
All right, Jared.
All right. You got it. Thanks. All right, everyone. I'm going to share my screen, and you're going to need, let me share my screen. You're going to need a phone or tablet, or open up a new tab on your desktop or laptop, whatever you're using. Basically, we're gonna we have like 6 quick short questions, guys. This is really short, but we would love the feedback. And if you can go to menti.com, again, your phone, tablet, right there on your desktop, open up another tab, menti.com, and type in that code 20450111. I'm sorry, 011. The code is up there across the top, menti.com. And you should see this same screen when you get there. So I'll wait just about 10 more seconds. Phone, tablet, open up a tab on your PC. And we have a couple questions. Again, this is just an effort to try to get some feedback from those who are involved and those who attend. Wish we would get feedback from more. Countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Okay, so the first question is going to be, how to keep most informed of ASIS Greater Kansas City activities. So select one answer from the choices there. How do you most keep informed? All right. All right, thanks. Good, good, good. Everyone can see the live results, yeah? On my screen, because I'm sharing. So mostly
Yes.
All right, mostly email. Oh, we got a latecomer. All right, thank you for your responses. I'm gonna move on to the next question. Next question is actually, what is your main goal as a member of the ASIS Greater Kansas City chapter? So this is, keep in mind, this is your goal as a member of this chapter, not necessarily of ASIS International, but this chapter. And there are 4 selections, 4 choices. So in your phone or in your, or whatever, you're gonna rank them. So select your one first, then select number 2 in order from your main goal. What's your main goal in order?
Jared, you don't have food on there. That would have been my main one, but maybe next time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Grub. Okay, good. 11. Last question. We had 15, I think, or 17. So we'll give it a few more seconds. Let some more people type, select their options. Very good. Very good. A close tie. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you. A couple more questions. Next question is going to be just you select just one option. It's how should the GSX pass be awarded? So just some background, our chapter is provided, we have a 1 pass to GSX for a chapter member, and we want to decide how can we award a chapter member with this free pass to GSX. And we'd love to get your thoughts of how that could be awarded. Last year, we did I'm sorry, not even last year, was that 2019? We did the chapter member that recruits the most new members.
It was last year too.
That was 2020 as well. So if you brought in a new member, and if you basically had them as a referral, they put you down. Yeah, Brock, I came to ASIS because my friend Brock is part of ASIS, and then Brock would get a point. His great presentation like drew me in. I couldn't resist after that. That. Okay, so good results. We got 15 right here. That's right, Brock. 15 responses.
I was to say, Jared, you're setting the bar pretty high here. I don't know that we want to be pushing it that high. Might disappoint.
Never. No, that's not possible. How should the GXX pass be awarded? Okay, great. Thank you for the feedback. Looks like auctioning it is a close winner. Okay, 2 more questions, guys. This question is, what was your favorite chapter event prior to the pandemic? So when we actually had in person, so think back over the years And this is going to be a type it in. So the free form text. So go ahead and type in your response or on your phone or on your desktop. And these will just show up randomly. Again, these are also all anonymous. I should have said that in the beginning. Sorry. Nice. The showcase is a good one every year. The brewery was great. There was a good turnout for the brewery. Surprise, surprise. FBI presentations, awesome. Trivia night.
Come on, Benton.
Someone's-
You gotta cut that out. You're
Bill-
making me blush, Benton.
Bill, you
What?
can't put in your own response for yourself. You can't do that. Sorry.
Bill's
That
favorite is
wasn't me. That was Benton.
I can't believe nobody likes the golf tournament. Might as well just give it up.
Oh, ouch.
ouch.
Just messing with you.
I like these are great. New. I like the idea. Just let's do something new. Something we haven't done. So someone who is new, so no idea what to expect. Awesome. I like the idea there as well.
What was the first event? Was that God creating the heavens and earth? I missed that. Benton was probably at that one. I missed that one.
Oh. I'm
And
gonna
then
mute.
visiting
Oh,
major sites in KC. Yeah, that's a good one too. So we can get a tour of the security. We should great. Of course, if you're a member if you're here and you're a member and you are at a large site in KC and would like to open your site up to a tour from the chapter, please reach out to the board, Rick or Bill or myself or David Brown. Okay, last question, guys. Sorry, I know this is already taking longer than it should. Sorry, guys. Okay, last question. This is a bonus question. Okay, bonus round. What is your prediction for the final score of the Super Bowl this Sunday? Type it in. I'm assume when the number is higher, we're gonna say that's Chiefs, right? Everyone here.
Do you even have to ask that question, Jared?
I just make sure. Well, these are high scoring. These are high scores. Okay.
KC wins. That's cheating.
I love it. This will be recorded, so I won't know who guessed it. I'll have to ask. Screenshot this. All right. Love it. Good scores. All right, everyone. That will end I'll stop sharing. That should conclude. Thank you very much for participating and for the feedback. It's obviously super valuable. The board, we want to make sure we're doing stuff for our members, what they want. I'll go on and on, but I'll stop there. All right. I'll turn it back over to Rick.
Thanks, Jared. Like Jared was saying, like the board, one of the greatest things about being part of a chapter is being the involvement, being, working with similar-minded folks from the security field and sharing ideas, mentorship, fellowship, networking. That being said, there's multiple opportunities to be part of the chapter. And one of the easiest and best ways to be involved with the chapter is through, outside of the board, is being part of a committee, either being a committee chair or just being an additional member to a committee or a planning staff. Shortly after this, I'm going to be sending out a poll or a request for information from the chapter, seeing who's interested in being a committee member. I see as a great way to volunteer, to be part of the chapter, bringing your unique specialties, insight into one of the specific committees. One of the major focuses that we have for this year is bringing new members into the chapter. Near and dear to my heart is military folks transitioning into the civilian world. And so we're looking at ways to reach them before they do their last day in uniform, and start looking at like, hey, security is more than gates, guns, and guards. We're so much more. We're involved with a lot of the business aspects, and it's not what a lot of people think about. And then, but also law enforcement, and then also opportunities like for some folks that we deal with, that transitioned into our field just because like, hey, this looks interesting. I work with security all the time, and this is maybe a field that I would like to move into. With that being said, I'm going to turn over to Brock, who is
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
So, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to announce to everybody, AT&T has posted a senior investigator job in asset protection in San Ramon, California. That's in the San Francisco area. So if anybody's interested in significantly increasing their cost of living, let me know. The job is open for 1 week, so you can get with me afterwards offline.
I was going to say, if anyone
Just FYI.
Well, let me take a big hit off that crack pipe and then I'll consider it.
That is readily abundant in San Ramon, from what I understand, or the neighboring area.
Jeez. This is where I want to go.
Yeah, unless Jared is asking, introducing each person. That seemed to be a kind of a resounding failure last time. So if you want to introduce yourself, you go ahead and get an IM and put your name and where you're from and how do you find out about our organization. If you're not part of the chapter, that would be great.
Say, hey, Rick.
Yeah.
Also, in the comment feed, if you're looking to get CPEs for this particular session, you need to email me. Also, if your name is not appearing on our participant page, let me know how it's appearing. If there's just a number or a guest name, I need to be able to identify your name with the associate participation identifier from the participant page. So we've got 22 participants. Mostly everybody's identified. I recognize there are a few guests that I do not, that are listed by numbers. So be sure to list your name and how you're identified on the participant page. So I've been sending those out as the presentation goes on.
So I did the committee pitch. And now one of our committee chairs has a pitch he would like to talk to the chapter about an initiative. Brock?
Sure, thanks, Rick. So my role, I'm the young professional liaison for the chapter. And one of the things that kind of been on my mind here and would like to start getting involved is giving people who are either transitioning into the security role or interested in learning more about security, an opportunity to understand what the career opportunities are. And one of the, I think, best ways we can do that is just career spotlights. We have, as Rick had mentioned, a lot of diverse backgrounds here today, and within the chapter, we've got people coming from law enforcement, people who transition from military. We have people that transition from engineering roles into a security role, or HR, or guard force. There's a lot of different backgrounds, and a lot of even within security, a lot of different focuses, a lot of different job functions. And I think it would be helpful, well, for me and for anybody coming in, to really understand what are the job functions in security beyond the guns, guards, and what was the other one you mentioned, Rick? Guns, guards, and
Gates.
Gates. That's the gates. Yeah. And as we talked about it, I thought, that might not just be for those who are new to the chapter or new to security. Like, many people would be interested in hearing what other people in security are doing. So we're looking at starting a luncheon similar to this, probably a monthly, where we'd have 2 or 3 people spend 5-10 minutes talking about their careers, what they do, their job functions, how they got to what they're doing, advice that they might have for those who are new, if they wanted to do something similar. Just kind of give us an opportunity to understand a little bit more about what we're all doing on a day-to-day basis and how we got there. So I apologize, I don't have the cool fancy technology that Jared has, but I'd like to just hear from the group here. If we did an hour lunch, probably sometime later in the month, like a third or fourth Wednesday or Thursday, and had a couple of people spotlight their careers, who would be interested in attending one of those? And if you just use the reactions and hit the hand raise, that'll kind of give us an idea how many people would be interested in that and would attend. All right. Okay, that gives us a pretty good idea. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, now we're on to the presentation part. So Brock, stay on. Our guest speaker for this week is Brock Josephson. He's a physical security specialist at Burns and McDonald, where he helps clients around the country with their assets and mitigating their physical security vulnerabilities, design electronic security systems to mitigate those vulnerabilities. Brock is a certified physical security professional and has 10 years of experience in intrusion detection, video surveillance, and access control systems. He is our young professional chair. So with that, to you, Brock.
Thanks, Rick. All right. So we're going to be talking a lot of technology here today. It's kind of my background. I'll try to keep it fairly high level, and I'll try to insert a little humor here and there to keep people awake. But if I start droning too far, just I think there's a slap function on there. If you want to hit the slap function, that'll work. Jar me back into reality. So we're going to talk a little bit about security implementation and some of the things that to consider when taking on a large scale or even a small scale security upgrade project. I'll hit some of the ones that many of us may think about and try to hit some things that we might not think about when doing something like that. I want to ask the question, if you use your hand raise function again here before we get started, how many on the call today have been involved in selecting or implementing technologies in your function that you're doing now or in a previous function?
Yeah, if you do that, I can put it in that archive. Yeah, I understand.
See a few. Okay, good. Okay, so this should be relevant to many. So here at Burns and Mac, we have a group. We have probably about between our corporate security department and our consulting security group that I'm a part of, we have about a dozen or so. And we have a security failures group that we like to share as we find just security failures in the field. So I'll start with just a couple of these. This is what we don't want to end up with. I love the idea of utilizing the resources that we have, but that one's an interesting one. Definitely points for ingenuity there. Probably doesn't meet all the specs and the codes for electrical. That one I like a lot. Definitely providing a lot of security there. I wish I could say I hadn't seen something like this, but Yeah, that does happen. And the last one, this is not specifically security, but I got a good kick out of this. So if the elevator does not move, do a small jump, it should move after. How many of you would get in that elevator after reading that sign?
Josh, the slide didn't transition.
Oh, it didn't.
No.
Ah,
There we go.
there we go. Shoot. Well, that was anticlimactic. Okay. So high level phases of technology implementation. So we're going to focus mostly on the system planning today. But before planning a system, should be some sort of risk assessment involved. We don't want to spend a lot of time turning on wheels trying to identify specific technologies and what they should do if we don't know what our risks are. So in my role, we do a lot of security consulting work. And when we get contracted to do a security assessment, one of the first steps we'll do is work with the client to identify the risks that we're trying to mitigate. Because if we just have a kind of a high level ambiguous idea of, oh, I want my facility to be more secure. Well, we can do a whole lot of stuff to make your system more secure, your facility more secure, your people more secure, but you need to have some sort of metrics, and you want to focus your dollars, limited dollars, to improve your resilience. And you want to improve your resilience based on metrics that are set by your organization. So we won't spend a lot of time on that today. Today we're going to be focusing on the system planning, but that is always a step that we get contracted to do security planning. We always jump back to, well, where's your risk assessment? You have some sort of basis of design that was developed based on a risk assessment. If not, let's get that done before we start planning a system. Then I apologize again, I'm behind. So we're talking about system planning, and then that breaks into smaller phases. We develop the performance metrics for the systems that we're looking at implementing. How well are the systems supposed to work? If it's a camera system, what is the goal of camera? Does it need to look at certain areas? Does it need to run certain analytics? Does it need to have meet a certain base requirement for pixels on target? So access control system, does it have to meet certain cyber requirements? Does it have to have certain usability metrics that we need to meet? So we'll develop those metrics. Then we look at, what do we have in place? Too many times we get involved in these types of projects where the client has identified a budget and they say, hey, we got this much to spend, let's go out and get the latest and greatest. But oftentimes 90% of what your functionality that you need to have, you're already implementing. So we want to try to utilize what's in place that's working well. And then we identify, what are the gaps? What gaps do we need to fill? And we'll go into these in a little bit more detail, but then we jump into shortlisting system solutions that fill those gaps identified. We test those systems, maybe the top 2 or 3, identify and develop a plan to integrate them, both on the technology side and also on the process and procedural side. And then implement them and maintain the system. We'll dive into a little bit more detail on each one of those and some of the things to consider. So first step, developing performance metrics. Metrics, there can be a lot of different metrics that we develop, but I typically try to break them down to 1 of 6 categories. There's functionality metrics. Going back to the camera example, is what does the camera need to be able to do functionally? It needs to be able to view this area. And it needs to be able to provide enough clarity that I can identify who is coming and going. For instance, it needs to be able to speak over a certain protocol. It needs to be IP. It needs to be PoE. Some examples of some functionality metrics that might need to be met. So we should be talking to, if it's a security system like a camera, get your IT group involved or telecom group involved. Maybe talking to the different business units where the cameras would be located, so you can understand what their expectations are from those cameras. Obviously, your security group is going to be involved in identifying some of those functional metrics. Whoever is going to have any piece involved with this system should have some input on it. Then we have what I like to call the usability metrics. How user-friendly does this need to be? Who's going to be monitoring the system? And what kind of training is that are those individuals going to have? Is this a system that's supposed to be self-taught, that you're going to have a high turnover area and somebody's going to have to be able to quickly learn it or be able to sit down and just figure it out? Or are you going to have folks that are going to have a little bit more training and specialization that can manage these systems and use these systems? The communication and cyber requirements. Cyber is becoming more and more common, especially as more security devices are becoming IP devices. 10 years ago, if you went to a building like, here at our office, we have some 2,500, 3,000 employees here at this headquarters, and there's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 or 300 cameras. They used to all be analog, and you'd have one IP connection for the video recorder. Now, almost every project we work on, if it's a rip and replace or if it's a new project, it's IP camera. So every one of those devices now has a network interface, and they're computers essentially. So they have to maintain certain cybersecurity standards. Some of the camera manufacturers are really good about keeping up with them. Some of them aren't. But that would be an area where you definitely want to understand from your IT group and your cyber group what the requirements are for any device that sits on the network, and vet the systems that you're considering based on those requirements. And we have environmental, so things like, it's going to be outside, it's going to be temperature hardened, is it going to be like an IP66 or IP67, is going to be rated to work outside. Cost obviously is always going to be a factor that's going to be involved. And then viability. So viability, I look at this as a metric more for the manufacturer, the provider of the system. How viable is that provider? Are they brand new? Nobody's heard of them. Who else has used these types of systems before? Do they have extensive experience in the market? If we go with this technology and we invest in it, because it's an investment, are we going to be able to get the support we need from the provider? So these are all some of the factors that we want to consider when we're considering implementing a technology. And what I'll do is I'll build, well, we'll get into a little bit more as we talk about Shortlist, but I'll build a scorecard and rank the potential candidates based on how they meet these different criteria. So, and again, this is focused on, we're not focused on the technologies at this point.
That's pretty much that.
We're focused on just creating that list of what are the requirements that the technology needs to meet. Then once we have that list, then we can go into starting to identify technology gaps. And with security technology, especially, if you go to one of the big, the GSX show or the ISC West, if you've ever walked one of those floors, it can be overwhelming. It's amazing how many technologies are out there. I didn't look at the latest, but I think I remember from ISC West, if you look at 2019, they had, I want to say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 video surveillance vendors only. And then you got access control, you got your gates and your bollards and all the different technologies, but just 400 to 500 video surveillance technologies at the show. To try to weed through all of that can be daunting. And if you go into it just saying, hey, we want cameras, let's start looking and seeing what we got, you're more than likely, it's kind of like going house shopping before you've identified what your needs are for the house. So let's just jump on to Zillow and start looking at houses, and then make a decision from there. You're going to end up with too much house that doesn't meet your needs. Same with security technologies. So I'm going to use an example of a drone here, because drones are kind of a hot topic. So we'll play a scenario out. Let's say that for this example, we've identified the need to detect drones around our facility. And we're going to go with a functionality metric here. We've decided that our functionality metric, or one of them, is going to be, we want to detect a minimum 90% of the drones within 100 meters of our facility. Now, you would create a whole list of these based on other requirements for the other functional areas, but for simplicity, we'll just go with that one, and we'll go through. Again, I'm just gonna have to close this because I'm keep looking at the wrong screen. Here we go. So we've got that requirement. We're going to start looking at shortlisting technologies. So first, I'm going to look at what I'm already using. This was for a utility, but it could be for anybody. What kind of technologies am I using currently for security? I've got maybe cameras, I've got access control, maybe I have some radar or something else that I'm using. Can anything that I'm using meet what we need? Can they meet the functionality requirements? Well, a camera can do that. The cameras, we can do that. Do they meet the usability requirements? Yes, they probably do. We're already using it. Communication, yes. Environmental, yes. Maybe, the number of cameras that we need to do to get 90% probability of detection is just cost prohibitive. So we say, no, it's not going to work. At that point, now we're going to start looking outside of our current deployed technologies. So from there, we want to look at shortlisting technologies. And depending on how much time you have and how much time you're willing to dedicate to the shortlist, I like to start with just simple questions. Basically, take these functionality list of functionality requirements we identified and just create a list of yes, no questions. Example might be, is the technology able to detect drones at least 100 meters in the X, Y, and Z dimensions? Can it support HTTPS protocol? These examples here for communication. Do we go through for each one of those categories and create our yes, no questions? And then once we've created that, the goal is to shortlist it. So we want to try to throw things out as fast as possible. A good place to go would be, your GSX or ISC West websites, and you can then filter out technologies based on focus area. So I could say I'm looking for drone detection. We'll get a list of, 90 technologies for drone detection. And we just start going through and marking off anything that's not going to meet our requirements. I'm not calling any vendors or technology providers at this point. I'm trying to do it as quickly as possible. So if I can just do it right there from from like that list of GSX or IC West, I'll do it there, or maybe looking at the website, looking at a spec sheet, saying yes, no, 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 and trying to get it down to maybe a list of, I don't know, 5 to 10 viable technologies. Once I've got it to that list, I would go into a little bit more detail, maybe ranking these and saying, hey, how well does this technology do on detection coverage? Oh, this one looks like it's the best. This one looks like it's the second best, third best. And you can weigh this based on which criteria are more or less important for you, but some sort of matrix like this gives you a scorecard at the end. It says, okay, well, you know, this is based on these 5 technologies that we've shortlisted. Tech D probably looks like it's our leader. Tech C would be first runner-up, and then Tech E would be second runner-up. And once we've done that, and to this point, you might also want to start calling up some of these providers and getting a little bit more detail, getting beyond just the data sheet, getting maybe an online demo, or you might have some questions that you can't answer from just the online research, things like that, that you can get a little bit more detail. From there, we move into the testing performance, sometimes referred to like a pilot, where you actually probably going to start investing a little bit more money, a little bit more time in getting 1 or 2 of these technologies, setting up in a pilot site, and really putting it through the ringer and testing its capabilities. I'll caution too, be careful here, because there's, at this phase, you're starting to invest a little bit more time, a little bit more money in setting these up. Sometimes you might have to, you know, purchase some of this technology. A lot of vendors will provide a unit or 2 at no cost for a certain period of time for testing. But there's a tendency to want to make that technology work, and it's natural. You've already shortlisted it, you've invested a little bit of time, and you feel confident about it. You want it to work. I just caution, don't feel the need here, and a lot of our clients end up in this kind of position where they've gotten to the pilot and they've pretty much already made up their decision at that point. And the pilot is just to make sure that, hey, we can check the boxes and everything's gonna work and there's no major hiccups. But this should also be a disqualifying time or phase here, because what you do at the pilot phase is going to drive the rest of the implementation of the project. And this is the time to really discover what the weaknesses are, as well as the strengths, and any potential pitfalls that you might run into. And it doesn't necessarily mean if you identify weaknesses that you weren't aware of, that's okay, this technology is out. It just might mean that we got to adjust our procedures for how we implement it, or how we monitor it, or we might have to augment it with some other technology. But we want to be aware of what those strengths and weaknesses are. So when we work with our clients to develop these test procedures, I challenge them to challenge the strengths and weaknesses. Ask the vendors right out, what are your weaknesses? You know, they'll always tell you your strengths. They'll always tell you what the systems are good at, and they're going to try to focus on that. But you want to understand what they don't do well, so you can develop tests to identify and clearly set parameters around their weaknesses. And to the extent possible, we want to try to test these in the same environment they're going to be deployed in. If it's a device that's supposed to be outside, deploy it outside. If it's needs to be temperature hardened, deploy it, if you can, in the winter. Test it in the winter or in the summer, in the hottest and the coldest parts of the season. I understand that's not always feasible. Timeline might not let you do a 6-month pilot, but if you can try to test those environmental factors as much as possible. And then include as many environmental variables as you can. And we talked about weather, lighting conditions, if it's light dependent. Are you testing it at night? It might mean you have to run some tests after hours or early in the morning, but run those tests and build them into your testing procedures. Okay. So that was a lot. We'll take a break here. A couple more security failures. Lighten the mood. I love this one here. In case of emergency, lift cover, push button. So this one's a story. I got to tell the story here related to this one. So several years ago, did a security assessment at a small utility. It was upstate New York. And this was the type of town where, you know, everybody knows everybody. Nobody's really too concerned about security, but the utility, I'm standing, I've got their service center behind me. So it's where they keep their trucks, all their equipment, and they've got roll-up doors. It's all open. And the mayor of the town came to them and said, hey, you know, I really don't like that you got all of this equipment here and there's no security. Can you at least put a gate in place? So the utility came back, said, sure, we can put a gate. And here's the same gate, a little zoomed out. This is what I consider the very definition of compliance, the difference between compliance and security. Compliance is we've got to have a gate. So when I came on to do the assessment for these folks, they already knew that this was, okay, this is obviously not a very secure area. Well, they got a limited budget. They really didn't want to put up a fence all the way around their facility. So they asked me, you know, well, what can we do to make this more secure with a limited budget? So this was my recommendation. Ooh, tough crowd today. Okay.
Hey, Brock, we're all muted though.
Oh, that's right.
We're laughing inside.
Okay. Thanks for the reminder there. Okay, so do not drive on grass. It's as simple as that. Okay, moving on. Thinking outside the box. And quick, let's see, 12:25. We have to wrap this up in 5 minutes. Is that right, Richard?
No, you're still good.
Okay.
We go to 1 o'clock. So.
Oh, we go to 1? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to give you some time for questions.
Okay. Well, I'll try to stop talking in 10 minutes, and that'll give you time for questions. So, okay. So integration with security systems, especially, is becoming more and more prevalent as we deal more in the IP realm and integrating with additional systems that just 10, 15 years ago, I never thought about. HR systems, Active Directory. Those are two that are kind of new that we're starting to see more integration with that really wasn't really considered. Integrating your HR system with your card reader system, so or your access control system. So if somebody's fired or let go, automatically deactivates their card access to the facility. So this is an area where we definitely want to pay attention to when we're evaluating technologies and understand what integrations are going to need to happen. The other thing with integration is it can be a black hole. It can be very difficult to maintain custom integrations when there's like a custom API written between systems, and it's specifically for you. They can be very costly to maintain. So I always try to understand and push to understand what can be done with the systems as they work today. Going back to the drone example, let's say, you know, we want to have our drone detection system alert our operators and cue a pan tilt zoom camera to focus on the drone when it gets detected. Well, maybe there's a custom integration that can be written to make that work seamlessly and have all the bells and whistles that we want it to have, but comes at a cost, both in, you know, initial implementation and then in O&M. Maybe there's a simpler way that we can do using relay functionality, or maybe having multiple screens instead of single screen for the operator, that is much more cost effective and much less costly to implement. So I'm definitely a fan for integrating systems, and I'm not saying don't do it, but be aware of what it's going to cost and what it's going to take to maintain them. And then in the pilot, if there is any integration that's included, we want to include that in the pilot and test it and make sure that the integration is working properly. Because just because the vendors that are involved say that there's an integration, we might not understand the extent of that integration, and there could be loopholes, things that they didn't think about in the integration that isn't being communicated from one system to another. So I'll give you an example here in a second, but we also want to plan for failures. If that integration fails, how do we operate? Can we operate if the system isn't working? If the HR system is not pulling data from the access control system and vice versa, do we still have a plan B where we can take somebody out of the access control system who's been terminated, or add somebody to the access control system that's been added to the HR system? And then in the contracts that we write, holding manufacturers and integrators accountable. If they say that this system is going to integrate, specifying how the integrated system is going to work and providing that as part of the contract. They agree to maintain that for a certain number of years, and that it will continue to have that functionality. I wish I could say I hadn't been involved. I have been involved in rip and replace projects where we have worked with a client that has ripped out millions of dollars of equipment simply because the integration was not working in the way that it was intended to work. And it could no longer function the way they wanted it. You know, hardware wise, it worked. It just wasn't functioning the way they wanted to work. So end up replacing all of the hardware so they can get the integrated functionality they're looking for. Other things, you know, training, getting operator training, installers, making sure that they understand how the system's supposed to be installed and maintained. Stakeholders, to a certain extent, they should understand how the systems at a high level are working. And then incorporating that training into the pilot, especially for the operators. Another challenge we've seen is you get some of the stakeholders involved in the project that are they see all the bells and whistles of a new technology. They like it, you know, on paper it looks great. The pilot works well, and then it gets installed and handed off to the operators, and there's, you know, 30 minutes of training from the manufacturer, and everybody walks away, and the operator's left wondering how it's supposed to work, or they really don't understand how their job is supposed to function, or, you know, there's something that they are doing that just doesn't make it feasible for them to operate the system. And it's something that very simple that could have been caught if they were involved in the initial pilot project, and not just piloting the technology, but the full operation.
I did come home yesterday, studying. But some down there doing some studying on one of these words. Studying like this.
And then the last piece to the planning here is the maintenance, understanding what the O&M costs are going to be. Working with a client right now that they're looking at doing some pretty significant security upgrades across hundreds of sites, and it's going to be a multi-million-dollar investment, and they're aware of it. They're planning for all this capital expenses. They're accounting for, and we brought to their attention about a month ago, hey, this is also going to cost quite a bit to maintain. Once you get it installed, you're going to have a 7-figure ongoing maintenance cost for this system. Are you ready for that? Oh, you know what? We hadn't even thought about that. We probably ought to be planning for that. And because of that, they made some adjustments. And well, you know what? Maybe we're not going to have enough O&M budget to maintain all of this. Maybe we need to scale back, even though we've got the capital budget to pay for it. And make sure that our O&M budget is also going to be able to handle whatever goes in. And then the final piece is a knowledge transfer plan. As these projects progress from development of the metrics all the way through the installation and maintenance of the system, there's undoubtedly going to be multiple parties involved. Some parties won't be involved throughout the project. So capturing what is learned in the pilot phase, capturing what's learned in the shortlist system, so we don't go back to the 2-3 years from now, go back to the board and start looking at a new technology that maybe we shortlisted 3 years ago, and this is why. So having your project plan, but also your knowledge transfer plan of how knowledge is going to pass from one party to another is a key piece to the success of the overall program. So I know that was a lot. We covered a lot. I think 3 takeaways that I would focus on this. One is investing in technology, especially security technology, is generally a good thing. But it's not a good thing if you don't have a proper plan. I've seen a lot of very expensive paperweights in the field where good technology does good stuff. It just was poorly implemented, poorly maintained, and within a couple of years, it's really not doing anything. So if there's not a plan, it's better not to spend the money. The second thing I would suggest is do not be afraid to not adopt a technology. The further we get along with the pilot process, as I mentioned, the more pressure there is for a technology to be carried through to the end. And the further you get along with that, the more we tend to overlook potential issues. So identify the issues, identify the weaknesses, make sure you have a plan to mitigate them, and don't be afraid at the end of a pilot or at some point in the pilot say, hey, look, we spent, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars on this, but in the end, it's just not the right technology for us. And this is why, okay, that wasn't a waste of money. It was a good exercise. We learned, and we saved ourselves potentially throwing millions of dollars away instead of, a couple $100,000. And then finally, I'd say this is a pretty extensive process that I took us through, but some of these projects, we have projects of all different sizes. Some of them won't require every step. Some of them we can short track these, but we want to at least make sure that we're identifying what steps we're stepping over, what steps we're not exercising, and why we're not. Maybe we don't do a full pilot because we've already deployed that technology elsewhere. We already know that it works. Okay, fine. We're going to go ahead and implement it here, but just we need to justify ourselves here. If we're ever taking shortcuts, why we're taking the shortcut or why we're not doing certain steps. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you guys for questions.
Does anyone have a question? Just come on up. Just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hey, Brock, I've got a quick question. As far as you're looking into the various IP camera formats, how many different platforms are there? Because I think there's a lot, and a lot of them are unsustainable. How do you distinguish between those that are likely to be sustainable, say like well, I don't want to mention a particular brand since this is a meeting, but you've got some that are prominent and others that are coming on that are going to be obviously cheaper. And then you've got some that have been banned by the U.S. government because they're manufactured by China. How do you discern between helping a client to make that decision?
So yeah, good question, Mike. Thanks. So some of the things that you mentioned right there are in our shortlist questionnaire. We'll start with working with the client and determining what are the requirements of the camera, the functionality requirements of the camera. They'll usually have some, and then we'll usually suggest others that they might not consider. The ban on some of the Chinese manufacturers, the years of experience of the particular camera manufacturer, for instance. Are there other clients that we're aware of that have used that? If I've never heard of the camera technology, that's usually a big red flag. They'll say, hey, you know what? It's your money, your decision if you want to do this, but we've never worked with this technology. So just be aware of that. And there are probably, of the 300 or 400 camera technologies that you'll see at IC West, as is, I would probably say there are less than 24 of those that are constantly investing in improving their cybersecurity protocols and being aware of what new cyber threats are out there. Most of the IP cameras that you'll see there don't even address cybersecurity at all. And that, especially these that you're putting out of the perimeter, that provides a huge opportunity for bad actors to come in and access your network, because they've got a network connection. They don't even have to, in most cases, breach your perimeter to get onto your network. So that's a big one we'll always bring up. And then the last one that I like to bring to their attention is ease of use. How are they going to use the cameras? Are they going to have a dedicated security operations center where they're monitoring these systems and they're used to video management systems? Or is this going to be, a screen on a wall in the office somewhere that nobody's really watching or paying attention to? It's just there in case something fishy shows up, and mostly for forensic purposes, so they can go back and review the camera feed. If that's the case, we want to make sure that it's something that's very simple for them to use, that they don't have to go through an extensive training or go get trained by the manufacturer to use. They need to do 3 functions. They need to be able to display video, they need to be able to review recorded video, and they need to be able to export it. So, in that case, we're looking for something simple. So those are a few of the questions we'll typically walk through and ask the client if they don't already have a good idea of what they're looking for.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Hey, Brock, this is Rick. So I know that your presentation was the technology implementation, but when you're going through that, do you like look at like the non-technology security functions and how they're going to interact, and how do you kind of like quantify those?
Yeah, and that's where it gets a little bit more difficult. Yes, you need to make sure that the technology, the point of any technology is to enhance the ability for us to do our jobs, right? And if it's not making it easier for us to do our jobs, then it's not doing its job, in my opinion. So we can put a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of cool stuff, but if it's more difficult at the end of the day for us to do our job, then it's not really serving its purpose. So understanding, we go back here. I'll go back to this slide here that we started with. In the risk assessment piece, we want to understand how the system is going to be utilized and what functionally needs to happen. Where were the gaps? So if you take a guard, for instance, let's say, we'll just use an example of a guard post, and you're checking people that are coming and going in and out of your facility. What does that guard need to be able to do, and what can they not do? Maybe they need to be able to see around the corner somebody that's coming before they get up to the guard booth, and right now they just can't do that. So identifying what's going to be helpful for them, what's going to help them do their job. They don't really care too much about all the bells and whistles that come with a 4K camera that has analytics that can do facial recognition and can serve you up a piping hot coffee. They just want to be able to see around the corner. So identify those and focus the solution on what functionally does it need to do to make their job better or easier to do. And that becomes much more difficult as we expand that. That's a simplified example, right? Because we got one job function for one person. When we implement a system, we got to take that into account for dozens or maybe even hundreds of stakeholders and how they're all going to play with it. But it ties back to creating that functional list of requirements. That list of requirements should make people's jobs easier. And if it's not making people's jobs easier, then we need to go back and start at square one and figure out what's going to make their jobs easier. And there are some things that are worth, I'll mention too, there are some things that are worth the trade-off where we are going to give up ease for security. That's just the nature of the job we're in. We're dealing right now with a number of clients that are moving from a less secure access control system that uses a unencrypted card to speak between the card and the reader to a more secure card access system that has encryption between the card and the card reader. And there's trade-offs for that. The range of the card reader is shortened, and the time that you have to hold your badge next to the reader is increased. You can't just swipe it, you got to hold it there for a second for the encryption to work before it'll let you in. So that's an operational change for people. They're just going to have to be trained into understanding, okay, once we implement this, I'm going to have to hold my card closer to the badge reader, and I'm going to have to hold it there longer before I can get in. And your communication strategy is crucial because everybody's got to understand why they're doing that. If they don't understand why they're doing that, they're going to get frustrated. But if they understand that, hey, this helps protect me at work, because now somebody can't just walk by me without me even knowing that they're doing it and clone my card and get in as me. It's worth that extra second to hold the card there, and maybe an extra inch that I have to hold it closer to the reader. Is it an inconvenience? Yes, but is it worth it from a security standpoint? Stakeholders might say yes. But that needs to be communicated as part of your plan.
They'll have their own, so.
I think we have time for one more question. Does anyone else have a question?
Well, all the. So this one we do have.
All right. Well, appreciate the talk, Brock. I found it very informative, and I believe the rest of the chapter as well. I'll probably just get your your home address, and I'm gonna send you one of our coins for as a thank you gift for this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there
I'll display it
anything-
proudly.
Yeah, yeah. It looks pretty sharp.
They don't now.
Anything from the chapter, the board? Bill?
Negative, nothing from me.
Well, I think that's it for this month. I appreciate everyone coming and signing on. And we should have the new March event coming online soon as I get all the information squared away. So just be on the lookout for that. And I think we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.